just waiting on Councilmember Waring. Actually, he's signing on now.
Okay, great.
We are live streaming and we're recording, so we're ready to start whenever.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk, Jennifer, for setting that up. And I think I've got an old version of the agenda in front of me, so I will get the new one. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope y'all had a good weekend. All right. Sorry. So, close the screen where I wasn't seeing anybody. There you all are again. I'd like to call this here meeting to order and ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Amen. Thank you, Amen. Everyone. Amy's going to basically make the presentation here again, as usual, in her excellent fashion. And first up, we're going to talk about our expenditures, the things that we view that were recommended from the departments as being good things to do in 2023, and then we'll talk about the revenues after that. Amy, you want to pick it up, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Y'all see my screen okay?
We can. Yes,
okay.
Ma'am.
Okay, so moving right in. Total departmental requests from the departments that we received for 2023 is $21 million, 19 of that from the general fund, and 1.7 about from enterprise funds. Out of those requests, there's some that we considered mandatory or life safety. $1.5 million of those requests we consider mandatory life safety. 1.3 from the general fund, 170 from the enterprise fund, and of that amount, there's $730,000 of potential revenues that we can utilize to offset the expenditures, and then 285 in general fund reserves and 445 in ARPA funds. Net impact to the budget for those mandatory life safety requests is almost $744,000. And I kind of go through those in the next slides. This is all the general fund. Most of this is for the fire department, as you can imagine. This first line here for the fire department is for the personnel we'll need for the new fire station on Johns Island, and that will be for half a year. And then these are additional costs for uniforms, etc., for those personnel. There's carbon monoxide alarms, some other tactical equipment that you'll see, the SCBA compressor for one of the stations, Thames ear microphone and headsets. These are all like just equipment that they need that we consider mandatory life safety items that we really should just fund no matter what.
So, and y'all, I think Chief Courier's on the line, but I think in a nutshell, we know that the new fire station won't be finished yet over on Johns Island, but what they plan to do is add another apparatus to the existing station over there and go ahead and start building up our workforce on Johns Island and our capacity and just tighten up out of that existing fire station, and then of course move to you'll have staff that's fully trained and up and ready when the new station is ready. Is that right, Chief?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. We will eventually need 2 units out of that firehouse, each unit being 15 personnel. So our request is for 15 firefighters, so we can go ahead and start to train up and phase in those units. When you start to factor in our capacity to train people at our Milford Street location, this probably is a 2-year program for us.
Right.
And then we did put in a grant, a safer grant for the other 15, which we're hoping we'll hear end of November, maybe beginning of December, whether we receive that grant. So the total for a fire is $1 million in mandatory life safety that we consider life safety anyway, mandatory. And then the rental registration program that was approved by council, we'll need personnel for that. So this is for a person for that function, since it's a new function. And there's a little bit of revenue that we will collect to help offset that total cost. And then for facilities maintenance and grounds maintenance, replacing pedestals and wire on the north and south loading docks, they're in need of repair. And then the electric blowers for grounds maintenance as part of our climate action plan that was also approved by council.
Amy, back to the Johns Island Fire Station. When you
Yes.
calculate the 15, people, additional people, is that at the current rate of pay or at the proposed rate of pay?
That is at the current rate. But
I think we really need to reflect that at the proposed rate. I mean, why would we?
we will, Councilmember Waring, once we get all of that nailed down so that we know exactly what we're doing.
Okay, so the probability is going to be more than the 665,000.
Yeah, it will be some.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. And then enterprise funds, there was only 2 items that we considered mandatory, like tree management plan for the golf course and then the netting for the golf course. And the netting will be covered by hospitality funds, just so you know that. Any questions on those? Okay, so just.
So Amy,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
on the golf course, this does not include any of the other requests for the golf
This
course.
is- Yeah, I'm just going through mandatory life safety right now. We'll go through the other requests. In
Okay, that's what I was thinking, but that's just want to double check. Thank you.
You're welcome. So moving on to the general fund, just for the additional requests, total request just for the general fund was 19.3 million. We're recommending about 7.8 million of those requests be funded. 2.8, almost 2.9 could come from other funding sources and 2.3 from ARPA funds. The net impact to the budget would be about $5.6 million. And then I'm just going to run through. I did a summary of each of the departments just to make it easier for us to go through, because I'm not sure. It'd be easier if we were sitting in a room and we could go through the requests like one by one. So this was my next best option for us to do it. So for our budget, finance, and revenue collections, the total additional request was 415,000. 369 of that is for additional staffing, and those are for 3 positions that we really need. One is a grant writer, which was requested pretty much by all of council in the mayor's office. And then 2 positions for our ERP system that we'll be implementing over the next 2 years. One is an ERP project manager that we will need to oversee the whole entire project. That position will be temporary just through until the software is completely implemented, probably 2 to 3 years. And then the other is enterprise system administrator, who will be the keeper of the system basically for the rest of time. Make sure that we have somebody support staff for the software, the system, troubleshooting, report writing, solving issues, making sure that we're keeping up with upgrades and all of that. That's what that position will do. So that would be a permanent position. The rest was just for increases for supplies and necessary training to obtain and keep up with certifications. Any questions on that? Okay. executive, I just did a summary because there's several different divisions within executive, so you can see the total request was 897,000. We'll go over each of the divisions within executive, and we're recommending about 357 of that be funded. So the court main request was an increase in juror pay and bonuses and pay adjustments to establish a youth education court. We're recommending to fund the juror pay, and there's also some increases, smaller increases to travel and training and things like that for staff and for the judges, and just other smaller supplies.
Amy, can you go back one slide?
Yep.
So the prosecutor's office requested $180,000.
Mhm.
Is that to add more?
It was for one prosecutor,
And y'all turned that down,
right?
ma'am?
Yes, we didn't. That's not one of our recommendations.
What is the increase in jury pay?
You have to ask me that. I don't know. Yeah, hold on one second. Let me look.
I know we're paying a real pathetic fee, I think of $10 a day or something like that.
It's 5 now, I think, Councilman Shade, and I think the increase request is to take it to 10.
Yep, that's right. From $5 to $10.
And we increased it to $25.
Well, that's going to add to the amount. We'd have to recap.
I know, but to ask somebody to come serve on jury duty for a half day or a full day and pay them $10 is somewhat insulting, quite frankly.
So we can talk to Susan about that and look at that, Councilmember Shade. And then for the mayor's office, it was really just the lobbyist contract, just increasing that contract. And that will come to council when we renew the contract in the beginning of the year, 2023. Corporation counsels really increase in contract legal services. As you all know, there's more and more cases, and the complexity of those cases is getting more complex. So they were asking for a small increase in their contractual services. There was quite a few requests for resiliency and emergency management, additional personnel and contract items. 2 of the positions that they requested, one was a communication and community engagement manager, and the other is another emergency management specialist. We are recommending funding both of those positions. Their number 1 priority for the executive department was the communication and community engagement manager. They were also asking for contract to continue the compost program and funding for the Cambros for prepared meal transportation in the event of storm, and funds for funding for professional certifications. Cultural affairs, biggest request was for public art initiative. And then Mayor's Office of Children, Youth and Family was a financial empowerment coordinator. Any questions on executive?
Can you go back one slide?
Yep.
Go ahead, Councilman Warren, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilman. I'll defer.
Would this help?
So the 8,625 is only for the mayor's office, or that Office of Children, Youth and Family?
That's just for, yes.
And can you go to the next slide over? One more.
Yep.
So that $8,000 is covering this financial empowerment coordinator?
No, that was actually, we didn't recommend funding for that. That was for additional training that they had asked for. And let me see, sorry. For the youth summit and other just training for them for their division. Sorry, I should have been.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I do. Go back to the previous slide. this is on the, I guess, where you had the cultural affairs thing. And my question is probably out of order, but I guess this is culture. You know, we have a lot of tagging that goes on around town, and it seems like if you have a blank block wall, somebody's gonna put some graffiti on it. And I found out, and it seems like when we put some art on it, they don't tag other people's art. I've had this conversation with Mr. Riccio, and he's actually seen the same thing. And I'm wondering, I don't know whether some money goes in the budget on the cultural affairs or art or what, but some of these folks maybe can be engaged. I don't know, maybe with a little money anyway, to put something attractive as opposed to something that blights. And I don't know where we put some money aside for that. There's a place right on the corner of Spring and St. Philip. Spring and Cumming, I'm sorry, Spring and Cumming. Old store on one side, and you have an old mural on the side, on the south side.
Right.
And on the north side, this block wall, I think the city's covered up a couple of times. And they come back and they put graffiti on it. I just think if we put some kind of, I don't know whether we have art contests or what. And a good example of that would also be the metal switching boxes at various intersections. When you put art on those, people don't tag it. When you don't put art on it, people tag it. So I think those are some good ideas to kind of dress up or make things attractive at a nominal price. But where do we get the money? What pocket do we get that out of? You go to Hughie and Meeting Street, just before you get up and go, if you want to go to Mount Pleasant off of Meeting Street, that switching box is wrapped with a piece of Jonathan Green's art. Nobody tags it.
That's right.
We got that similar problem over in West Ashley area with these switching boxes. So I guess somewhere, I think it'll take a nominal amount, but at the same time, I don't know whether that comes under cultural affairs or Amy, where would you put some kind of?
We would normally have it through cultural affairs.
So something that could, in particular, our gateways coming into the city, our corners, the Tigers are winning out. Let's put it like that.
And those wraps are effective that way. They're not real expensive, but they're not inexpensive either. I think it's about $2,000 and may have gone up a little bit
Really?
to do one of those wraps. We did another one up at Brigade Street and Meeting Street that our own artists in our livability department, Kelvin painted for us.
I think Mr. Riccio told me about him. Said he's very talented, by the way. Gentlemen, you're talking about it. Again, maybe we can come up with a little money to help people like that with a bonus or something to do it. For example, when you go in Waterfront Park where the splash fountain is, and you take the right and you go down the places where the little squares where they have the park benches, all of the brick paving in there, believe it or not, was done by a city employee. His last name was Gates, a brick mason. Obviously saved the city a ton of money. So I don't know, maybe we can, the long and short of it is kind of make our areas a little attractive. We got employees that could do it, or maybe even come up with an art contest, and who comes up with the best design, we pay them a nominal fee to go out there and do it. Anyway, I've seen it in other cities that work pretty well. I mean, we're down in Fort Lauderdale not too long ago. Almost every one of those doggone switching boxes has some theme on it, some art theme on it, depending on what part of town you're in.
So, Councilmember Waring, just so you know, the original request for this was $100,000. There's a NEA grant that they wanted to apply for that's $50,000, and it's a 50-50 match, so it would have been $50,000. So that was some of not knowing for sure about the grant and what we were going to do with that, if we would even get accepted for the grant, was some of the reason why we're not funding it. But we could, look at what you're talking about in lieu of
Yeah.
that.
Thank you. I mean, in terms of revitalization, those are kind of affordable steps, something like that.
I agree.
All right, so we'll circle back around with that. Any other questions? Okay, fire department, we already went over the total additional request was 3.5 million. You'd see 2.4 for operations. That would include the mandatory life safety of $1 million that we just went over, training and fire marshal's office. So like I said, we just went over the mandatory life safety. They're asking for 15 additional positions in addition to the 30 needed for the Johns Island station. 6 were in operations for a total of 627,000. We're recommending 3 of those positions based on their priority listing of them. There was 4 in training for a total of 382. We didn't recommend any of those. It was ranked 7th in priority, and all that request was for the 4 positions together. So it was a little harder to fund at that level. 5 in the fire marshal's office for a total of 507,000. They asked for 11, but we had asked them to kind of scale back and look at their programs over time to see when they would need the positions for those programs. So they came back and did that for us. So they would need 5 this year, 4 in 2024, and 2 in 2025. And those were for this accommodations group, and then also for their community risk reduction program. So we're recommending the 2 positions that they asked for the accommodations focused inspections for short-term rentals, hotels and motels, and because those funds can be funded with accommodations taxes. Yes.
So let's slow down a little bit on that. So the fire department is asking for 6 more personnel in operations. Is that for just Johns Island? Is that
No,
citywide?
this is 15 additional in addition to the Johns Island station. So there were 6 in operations, 4 in training, and 5 in the fire marshal's office for the 15. That totals the 15 total positions.
I'm sorry, maybe I just misunderstood you. 6 overall, but not 6 on Johns Island.
You need 30 on Johns Island.
I got that. Is it 6 in operations?
Yep.
Is that it? 6 additional
Yeah.
citywide,
Not right. That's exactly right.
ma'am?
Yes, 6 additional
Citywide.
citywide.
Are these basic firefighters?
No. So there is a mechanic that they're asking for. A communications battalion chief, a medical operations officer, and 2 firefighter or 2 FTEs for recruitment. I think that's your 6 right there.
So one of these positions was for recruitment?
2 of them are. We had done some adjustments to that they had asked us previously to the way they're structured their training division, and they're just asking now to restore those positions for that.
And then 4 additional personnel for training?
No, there's 2 for training. There's
Okay.
1 medical operations officer. There's 1 communications battalion chief, and then another for a mechanic.
Yeah, you said, and the next time I'm looking at says 4 in training.
Yep, 4 in training. Um,
I'm presuming that means 4 to help in training.
hold on, let me get there.
Yes,
Yeah, it's staff instructor positions. Yes, those are 4 specific instructor positions. Yes.
I'm just a little concerned about not meeting their request for training or for recruitment.
Amy.
Yes.
Hey, it's Kathy. The actual recruitment FTEs are to replace the ones we took out off the line to put in recruitment last year. They just want to restore those two positions that were taken off the front line. So it's not actually for recruiters.
It's restoring those positions back to the operations is what it
Yes.
is. Councilmember
Yes.
Dave. So it's not that we're taking anybody away from recruitment. It's adding it, the ones we took from operations to recruitment back to operations. That's what that is.
Correct.
Is Chief Courier available to? Is
He
he
is
okay
on
with
the
this?
line. Chief, can you add any light on this discussion?
So certainly, so the, what Kathy and what Amy were saying is correct. Of the requests for the operations division, 2 of them were positions that we had moved out of operations into recruitment. So what we were trying to accomplish is to leave the personnel in place to continue the recruiting effort. And since we moved those positions out previously, we wanted to restore those in operations.
So I just get kind of nervous, Chief, when we talk about operations and having enough bodies involved in operations means putting out fires and saving lives. That's what operations means to me. So are we short that number of personnel, or
So
you comfortable that this will work okay?
I am. Previously, when our staffing levels were, when we had more vacancies, we could move vacant positions over. But now that we are approaching full staffing, it's more critical to make sure that all the positions that would normally be allocated to the operations division are actually in the operations division. And this will move us, if not totally, writing everything and having all the positions allocated where they need to be. It'll at least get us within 1. So this is a good move.
Okay. The other question I have with you on the line, Chief, 5 in the marshal's office. Were those folks that we would use to help with the permitting process?
They could be. So some of them were to get a community risk reduction initiative off the ground, and then the others were focused on accommodations. And like the slide says, they'd be focused on short-term rental, hotels and motels. I believe, and I would need to double check with Chief Jalazada, but I do believe part of the focus was to make sure that we're shoring up the permitting process and offering support to the permit center as needed.
Okay. Thanks, Amy and Kathy and Chief for the response.
We move on. So remaining requests are mainly for additional training funds, specialized equipment, supplies, contracts for service plans, and a diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment and plan development, and also for a marine maintenance program and other maintenance programs. So we're recommending that we fund almost $2 million of their request. 429,000 is ARPA eligible. 215 can come from accommodations taxes. That's that our marshal's office item that we just discussed. And 644,000 can come from other sources. Good? Yes? Okay. Housing and community development, total additional request was $392,000. Majority of the request was to transfer 2 employees currently paid by grants to the general fund. We're recommending to transfer 1 of those positions. As you know, we've been trying to transfer all of those off from grants into the general fund over time. So we're recommending doing 1 and trying to do the next one in 2024. And that should take care of the staffing and housing and community development that's funded by grants. Other requests for staff, 1 was asked for by both housing and planning. I think we've talked about this one before. They both just asked for it, they needed it, but it's a better fit for planning. So we're recommending that position in the planning department, as you'll see later on. And then another position was for a part-time mental health specialist, and we talked through this. There's funding currently available for a contract person, so we're going to maintain that contract funding for 2023. Any questions on that?
I think the provider was having trouble finding an employee, even though we had the funds for the contract. So hopefully they'll have better luck.
Yeah, I think Gianna was looking at a different contract person there to help with that, and we've been trying to help her with that as well, so.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Human resources and organizational development, the total request was for around 172,000. The biggest of that was for a recruiter position that would market the city as an employer of choice by creating relationships with colleges and universities, as well as attending other job fairs hosted by other organizations. So this person would be on the road more, marketing the city. And most of their other requests were immaterial. They were small increases to contractual services, advertising for job advertisements, and hospitality supplies for job fairs and orientation. So we're recommending about $153,000 of their requests. 105 of that is for the recruiter position, and that includes fringes, supplies, and a vehicle. Any questions on that? Okay. Information technology, total request was 1.7 million. Wes went through these in great detail in his meeting with you, so I didn't feel like I should detail them all out again. We're recommending almost 1.6 million of his total request. Most of them are things that we need to do to keep our systems up, safe and relevant. And 500, almost 540 of that can be funded with ARPA, or is ARPA eligible.
So y'all may have noticed a theme here already, is that Amy and the team went back through all the requests to see if any of the expenses were eligible with ARPA or accommodations or some other funding. And we're blessed by that, y'all, again, this year, that we had some availability still of ARPA funds to be able to do that. And I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for going back through it and putting that lens on it. Thank you.
Welcome. Livability and tourism, additional amount requested, it's 128,000. Majority of the request was that additional staff person for a rental registration program that was passed by council that we talked about earlier in the mandatory life safety section. The rest was for college move out and additional funding for dilapidated buildings that need attention. So we recommended $103,000 of that. 78 of that is for that one person, as we talked about, and we're estimating around $25,000 in fees that will offset the cost for that position. And then 15,000 for college move out and 10,000 for dilapidated building materials. Any questions on that? Okay. Parks, their total request was 5.3. I just detailed it out by division, so it's a little bit easier for everybody. The total amount we're recommending from this is 3.3 million. We went through two of those items, the $230,000 for life safety previously, so you know. The electrical division is requesting one plumbing technician and an increase to electrical and plumbing supplies. So we're recommending funding for both of those items at almost $98,000. Facilities maintenance requested 3.1 million. The largest of that is a request for crew for Daniel Island that would service both the new recreation center and the tenant center that was just renovated. There was also several requests for increases to supplies due to increasing costs, and also the remaining requests were for building repairs and maintenance to the existing city buildings and structures in the amount of 1.2, of which 982 can be covered with other financing sources, which is hospitality and reserves. Any questions on those? Okay. Parks admin, the only ask they had was for an MOU with Clemson University to continue that partnership. That was $40,000 and we're recommending that be funded. Grounds maintenance requested 1.1. $110,000 of that was for the electric blowers that was approved by council in the climate action plan. The remaining was staffing and then just increases to cost of supplies like we're seeing in every other department. There was 2 crews that we're recommending for city parks. One would be on the peninsula, one would be off the peninsula to collect trash in those parks on a more frequent basis. And then we're also, I'm sorry. Question? I'm sorry. Okay. Increases for supplies due to rising costs. And then a street tree inventory, urban forest management plan contract was also requested, which we are also recommending. And that's an ARPA eligible item.
Amy,
Yes.
back to the MOU with Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta tell you, District 7 probably was the largest benefit of what those students in Clemson University did over in Ardmore section. They did a pier head off of the bikeway, and they used to call it the duck pond, but it looks a whole lot better now. And then a pavilion also, as well as the pedestrian bridge from the bikeway to W.L. Stevens Park. Those things would have cost the city exponential amount of money versus we, because of these students, got it at, I think, below cost because we didn't pay for the architecture. They got the material at discounts. I'm just wondering, who did they suggest? How do we get to the 40?
That was in the discussions between Jason and Clemson.
Okay, I got to tell you, I mean, I don't know if you all have seen it, but the walkway from the pedestrian, from the bikeway to the W.L. Stevens Park is something that is actually beautiful. It's made out of wires and it just really looks great.
Very
And
cool.
and because the mayor and the park system helped out a lot over in Ardmore, what was a blighted area, now people can recreate around, which was a retention area, by the way. With 2 retention ponds that cost about $16 million. This was when my father was on council, when a lot more Ardmore used to flood. It still floods, but nowhere near like it once did. And these collection areas are now something people can recreate around. So I'm sure people in other districts can use some of the community, the way the community gives back. I guess Clemson University certainly gives back to the community. These things that they putting in, I don't know if it passed the 50-year test, but it definitely passes the 30 or 40-year test for enjoyment. So when we put in 40, we get a whole lot more back than 40,000. Let's put it like that.
We do. That's true.
Good point. You get a lot of bang for your buck. Ideally would do even more projects with them, but there is that was part of the negotiation or discussion. They do have other things to learn and study in their program. So I think we're getting as much as they're able to afford us, so to speak.
Okay, I just didn't want to be greedy. District 7 in the last couple of years really benefited from it. And
yep, absolutely.
There may be some other projects in the other districts that can as well.
That's right.
Just wanted to share, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so construction requested 215, almost 216,000. This was for a construction technician and an increase to playground equipment. Maintenance, we are recommending both of those requests for funding. They're also asked for an increase to supplies due to rising costs. Recommended funding is $184,000 of that request. And so in total for parks, we're recommending about $3.4 million. 601,000 is ARPA eligible, and 1.5 million could be funded from other sources. through tourism fees, general fund reserves, and the building maintenance reserve that we have.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Shealy has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, Councilmember Shealy, thank you.
Amy, I'm just curious about the Muni and bathrooms and pavilion. Do we have that in the budget?
It's not in this budget, Councilmember Shealy. That would be part of the capital improvement plan that we need to bring back to you.
Okay.
soon.
And Councilmember, I asked Jason about that just this morning, and they do have some cost estimates now on some, I guess you'd almost call them prefab units, similar to the ones that the Charleston County used out at Stone Oak Park.
Right.
And so we know now how much money we'll need to put those bathrooms in, and between reserves and other funding sources. And I do want to meet with the Friends of the Muni to discuss those budgets and what else they want to do. But we have been working on that issue.
Great. I mean, as you know, I'm kind of an appointed member of the Friends of the Muni board from City.
Right.
And I know it's discussion. They would love to discuss that with you as well. So,
We're going to do that. Councilmember Shade?
I just wanted to chime in on that thought from Councilmember Shealy, because I'm on the Golf Commission with Councilmember Parker. So this has been a long running conversation of the need for those facilities out there, Mayor. And as you're addressing the Friends of the Muni, I would encourage you to come to one of our Golf Commission meetings. That's a very active group of men and women out there. And I think as Councilmember Parker mentioned one time, having tournaments and competition at the Muni is somewhat hampered by not having those facilities available. So we get it out there. I think it's going to make a lot of people happy and enhance the experience being at the Muni as
Right.
well.
Thank you.
Moving on, planning, preservation and sustainability, their total request was 1.65 million. We're recommending about $168,000. Planning and preservation, their total request, this is their admin division, was 14,000 for travel and training and additional expenses for boards and committees. We're recommending 7.9 of that request. Zoning requested about 533,000. Main request is for $500,000 to complete phase 2 of the city plan. We are recommending that be funded, and it's ARPA eligible expense. The first phase of that was also in 2022 budgeted with ARPA funds. And preservation is asking for a historical architectural survey inventory to ensure compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act. They've been asking for this since 2017. So we're recommending funding for this, and it's also an ARPA eligible expense. Design is requesting 99,000 for another designer. Planning and sustainability has requested 405,000. Main request for 2 positions in the downtown peninsula plan, 2 positions. One was a mobility planner and the other is affordable housing concierge. That was the position that both housing and planning had requested. So we're including that in planning's budget. And then the downtown peninsula plan was $200,000. And that would be also a continuation. We had already approved $350,000 in 2022 for that, utilizing ARPA funds. Right now, they haven't spent any of those funds. We're not certain they'll need the additional funding in 2023, so we're not recommending that at this time, but we could allocate ARPA funds to that at a later date to get that done if they needed the additional funds.
And Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Gregory has his hand up.
Councilmember Gregory, welcome.
Yes, my question was, how will this shared position be utilized? I mean, who would they report to? Planning?
Yeah, so it's not a shared position, Councilmember Gregory. They both saw the value of that, so they both asked for it, but everybody agrees that it should reside in planning. So
Okay.
they will report to planning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Of course, they'll be working with housing a lot, but it'll reside in planning.
Basically, they would be assisting the developers that are vetted by the housing department as being bona fide, affordable product or developers. So there'll logically be a lot of coordination between housing and planning on this position. Councilmember Waring?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess in the sense of planning, where would money come from? We've had a lot of conversations about improving the gateways coming into the city of Charleston. In particular, the North Bridge, coming in from the North Bridge with, the weeds that frankly block your view of what God has given us, the marsh. We contract with a company that cuts the grass, but they don't cut the weeds. So I suspect that's going to be a little bit more for that to happen. I've got pictures, videos when you come across and you look to the right, you run into the weeds in the culture. We've had this discussion a number of times, Councilman Shea, that West Ashley revitalization. But I think this is a time to actually tuck some monies away for that type beautification act. And I guess this maybe should have been in the previous section, but there is no discussion for this while we're putting together this budget. And we need to put some monies in the budget for, frankly, beautification. I don't think it's not gonna be a whole lot of money, but I gotta tell you, we gotta cut the weeds coming in to West Ashley.
Councilman Warren, that would actually be in Parks's budget, and I believe they did ask, that was one of the contractual services increases that we were recommending for funding.
And how much was that increase?
I don't remember exactly, but I'll get it and I'll let you know.
That would be great.
And this is related, I think, what Amy had just shared as part of the parks request, 2 additional crews just for trash and beautification and cleaning up, 1 West Ashley and 1 in other parts of the city. And those were recommended, correct, Amy, for funding?
That's right.
Yep.
All right.
Member Shade?
I appreciate Councilmember Waring, because you've been one of our strongest advocates for this particular part of West Ashley. And I've got to tip my hat off to my predecessor, because he was responsible for a lot of the work on San Rittenberg leading up to the North Bridge and coming off the North Bridge. And so it's a struggle when I travel up and down that little causeway to the bridge, to the park there. But Jason is on it on a regular basis to my request. Even this morning, there was a complaint about the work at the Piggly Wiggly site, the overgrown brush, and they were out there this morning first thing. So listen, thank you, because you ring that bell all the time. And thank you for keep on pushing that. You've been one of my strongest advocates, making sure we get that cleaned up.
We all in this together.
Yes, sir.
We're getting the number for you, Councilmember Waring. Just give us a second.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then business and neighborhood services requested 490,000. Majority of that is for the entrepreneurial resource center. That will be a coordinator position and an administrative assistant half of the year, because we don't anticipate it being open before or for the full year. Furniture and fixtures were included in the request, but we didn't include those because we already have ARPA funds allocated for that. And then the remaining request was mostly for training and professional services that we are also recommending. So the total we are recommending is about 968,000, and 599,000 of that is ARPA eligible.
And I would point out that we are applying for grants. This is ERC, they've now dubbed it, is our minority business incubator. And we've met with a couple of the banks that have some national funds that help promote just this kind of thing. So no guarantees, but we will be applying for some grants that may be able to offset these expenses by the time it opens up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And moving on to police, their total additional request was 2.2. Biggest request includes us police department personnel and space needs assessment, equipment for the DNA lab, additional encrypted mobile radios, and then increases to supplies and restoring to pre-pandemic related cuts. Or we're recommending 1.4 of that. 293 is ARPA eligible for the radios, and 850,000 can be funded from other sources.
Did that include a portion of the DNA equipment, Amy?
It does include the DNA equipment there. We
Right.
had some funds left over from the bond that we have for the forensic
Right.
lab, so we're using those funds for that equipment.
Right. Y'all, I think that's really important that we get our forensics center just as fully operational and independent as possible. The lead time on getting DNA results, they're just overwhelmed, I guess, the SLED lab in Columbia. So to have our own ability, I can tell you that having that forensic center has already made a huge difference in our police department being able to solve crimes and make arrests, particularly with our ballistics system and testing over there. The DNA will just add a whole nother level to that. Councilmember Shade?
Thank you, Mayor. Amy, do you know if we charge when outside agencies ask for our assistance from our forensic lab?
I think we're talking about that. I'm not sure where we are with that, Councilmember Shade.
Well,
I don't know how many other agencies we use us right now.
I would certainly encourage us to be trending in that direction. The mayor is right that, we need to have this thing fully funded and operational, and I'm glad that we were good partners and neighbors with our other law enforcement agencies. But this is an expense that our citizens are absorbing, and to help other agencies outside of the city limits, I think it's only fair that we charge something for those services.
So no other agencies are using us right now. Councilmember Shea, we have to get accredited first in order for that to happen. So this will help us get accredited and then help us move in that direction. Does that answer your question?
Ma'am?
Is that
think-
good? Okay.
Yeah, as long as y'all having some discussion about it and see which way it's trending. And I don't mind being a part of that conversation as well. But I just think that's something we need to be seriously considering.
Yeah, we just need to get accredited first. So all of this that we're doing will help us get accredited.
Yep, okay.
So public service, they requested 898,000. We're recommending 592 of that. Permit center, majority was for upgrading positions and incentive programs and things like that. We're hoping with the new pay plan adjustment that will take care of some of those issues for them. Inspections, some of that was for office space reconfiguration, membership dues, and publications. We're recommending a majority of the requests for membership dues and publications and travel and training and professional and contractual services. Public service admin, they have requested, their main request was for the additional position for deputy director of operations. And then there was some office reconfiguration for stormwater and public service. Streets and sidewalks asked for around $241,000. We're recommending 132 for additional equipment and increases to construction material supplies. Environmental services admin asked for 136. That was mainly due to supply costs in the Recollect system. I don't know if you remember, they discussed that with everyone when they reported or were talking about their budget requests. That will help It's an app that will help push out notices to all our residents. So we're recommending that for a total of $111,000 of that request. Garbage collection asked for, it looks like 11,000 in that whole spreadsheet that I sent you, but some of that was because there was a negative number in there for fees that they were anticipating collecting based on that code revision that they presented earlier on trash loads and things like that. So we took that out. So total true request was $42,940. We're recommending 40,000 of that. And that was for the continuation of the garbage cart audit. Any questions there? Okay, trash collection, same with that, there was a negative number in there for the code revisions that they have brought to Public Works Committee over the summertime. True request was 42,000, and we're recommending 20 of that for overtime, increase overtime for the trash division. Street sweeping, 50,000, almost 51,000. Majority was for big belly trash receptacles for maintenance of those and some parts and supplies, and then for the purchase of another glutton. And we're recommending both of those items. Fleet requested 245,000. Majority was for upgrades to positions and increases to supplies for increased costs and 2 additional vehicles. And we're recommending 77,000 of that for supply costs. Councilmember Shea, if you have a question.
Yeah, so Amy, on the fleet of 245, how much is that is distinguished from upgrades to positions versus vehicles and overtime?
You have to ask me that question, right? Can I get to the number in a little bit? I have it.
I
all.
know the tough questions I ask you to make sure you stay sharp.
To another screen. I have it. I can get it for you. Just.
I just that's a huge request differential from request to recommendation. So I was just curious as to.
I would say if you subtracted those 2 numbers, that would be mostly for the upgrades to positions and the vehicles. I think the vehicles themselves were $75,000. And it was just to have extra additional vehicles on hand. So that's why we didn't recommend it. But I'll get you all the numbers.
Thank you.
Yep. So in total, we're recommending 592 and 222,000 is ARPA eligible. Recreation was asking for an additional $1 million. The majority of their request was to fund programs back to their pre-pandemic levels and to purchase necessary equipment for their programs. You know that recreation's like fully back. So we really need to fund them again to where they were before so that they can successfully do their programs. So we're recommending 912,000 of their requests. 23,000 is ARPA eligible. And 310 of that would be offset by the revenues for the fee increases that they're requesting. Any questions on that? Okay. Traffic and transportation, they're asking for, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute, Amy, I'm gonna go back to recreation now.
Okay.
And maybe this was touched on before. I actually got a call and I had to walk out. But anyway, so the money for the restroom and all of that is caught up in this?
For the golf course?
Right.
No, that's going to be
No.
on the capital improvement plan. It's not going to be anywhere in the general fund budget at all. That
Okay.
will be on the capital improvement plan that we'll bring back to you.
All right, good deal. All right.
This is just for normal operations and programs and uniforms and just, you know, we're back to serving thousands of kids each fall and spring for our recreation program.
Gotcha.
And this is just keeping all that going.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And you know, Lori was instrumental in cutting back and doing what she needed to do to help us get through the pandemic. And so we just need to get her back to where she was. So her programs are in full swing for sure. So TNT, they're asking for 817. The largest request was for the conversion of Cumming and St. Philip Streets for the two-way, sorry. That's 362,000, but I believe the estimate is old, so it's likely to be higher than that. They're also requesting 2 positions, a permit technician and a traffic management center operator, and requesting to reorganize their personnel to upgrade positions one to a transportation project manager, and the sign shop superintendent. Remaining requests are to replace decorative signal poles and bases, equipment, and to return certain line items to pre-pandemic levels, as well as increases for supplies due to price increases. So we're recommending funding 176 of that. The positions, permit technician, which we're collecting fees for, that would cover pretty much that position, upgrading the 2 positions, and then equipment and supplies. And $48,900 of that is ARPA eligible. Any questions?
Councilmember Shade?
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep on chiming in on this, Amy, but again, that's a huge differential between request and recommendations. That's not even going to fund the conversion of Cumming to St. Philip
Yeah.
Street.
No, that's what we're not recommending that project.
So what happens if we don't proceed with that? It just stays dormant for another cycle?
Mhm.
Councilmember Shade? Waring?
Yeah, thanks. That's the story of our life, Councilman Shahid. Let me ask this. I know this isn't in the budget, but that branch of 61, when you come across the World War I bridge and you keep the right lane and take it back to St. Andrews Boulevard, I notice now we've got a little indicator there that tells you how deep the water is. Right now the solution is to put a barrier and go around the Savannah Highway and detour. But Mr. Mayor, is anybody with the state or county or anybody talking about, possibly raising that so we can, because that's an important artery on rush hour getting out of town. It's a little short strip of road that needs to be improved, but anybody putting in a request to improve that? Or
And I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly. What part or what?
When you come back west of Ashley
Yep.
on the World War I bridge in the right lane, and just as you come off, you keep straight for 17, but you veer right to come back to St. Andrews Boulevard.
Oh, sure, 61. All right.
Yeah, it floods to the point on the King Tides to where really they closed the area off now.
Right.
Is anybody on the state level or the county level, or we as a city, mentioning or trying to get funds to raise that so we won't have to close it off doing 80 times a year because of King Tides?
Right.
But you talk about the example of sea level rise, that's one of the best examples right there. I mean, we got plenty of examples, of course.
Yeah.
That never used to be the problem where it would flood to the point to where you can transverse the area. But today, now, we really put a barrier up and just detour people around until the tide goes down. But obviously, that's not the long-term solution.
Right. So we've had general discussions with them, council member, about, the state's responsibility, given that 80% of our streets are state maintained roads, and that's certainly one of them. I'm not sure that we made, in fact, I'm not aware that we made a specific request for that location, but I'm happy to, maybe a good starting point to get the rubber to meet the road, because you're right, it's a primo example of what we're going to see even more of in the future.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory, did you have your hand up new, or is that from a previous question?
No, that's new. Mine has to do with the conversion of Cumming in St. Philip Street.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And as you know, Mayor, that has been a request on the books now for years. And I'm just wondering, what will it take to strongly consider it? Because as you know, there are a number of neighborhood associations that have been pushing this for years for safety reasons.
That's right. And I think we've seen with the conversion of Spring and Cannon Streets that it can work. And of course, we did Line Street on our own, just internally a couple of years ago, maybe it's 3 years ago now. I think one approach that would be reasonable is just to break this up into two pieces and try to do St. Philip's one year and Cumming Street the next, you know, because it always seems like when we get to budget crunch time that it falls down on the list of priorities. But maybe if we split it up in two and got some updated cost estimates on what each individual portion would be, like Amy states here, it's an old estimate. So we do need to look at that again. I'm glad to ask Robbie if he'd take that approach.
If it's workable that way, I think it's a good approach, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
We can also consider whether that should go on the capital improvement plan rather than in the general fund budget as well. So enterprise funds, this should be easy, and I'm sorry if I'm boring you to tears. I just didn't know how else to kind of go through all of these requests. So there were small increases for the Old Slave Mart, City Market, Angel Oak, and the ballpark, and those amounts that you see there. Parking garage requests were larger. They were to upgrade EV chargers at the VRTC, Gilliard, Queen Street, and Tech Center garages for pressure washing, a mobile phone entry and exit system, increasing the minimum wage of contract employees, and increases to maintenance, all of which we recommend. Total request is 1.1 million. 481 can be funded from other sources, which are parking reserves. Golf course, they had 467,000 in additional requests, 170,000 we already went through in the mandatory life safety. Remaining was for personnel, including increasing temporary employees, overtime, increases for maintenance and supplies due to the increase in the use of the course and the increased cost of supplies. We're pretty much recommending all of that be funded. $10,000 is ARPA eligible. Hospitality fees will cover the netting that we talked about in the mandatory life safety. And that's all I had for that. Any questions? Councilmember Shea, that takes care of your golf course questions. Okay, I'll move on to basically the summary, recommending 10.7 million for general fund additional requests, 1.4 in enterprise. Total recommendations is 12.2 million. The pay plan adjustment, we had 16.5 million that we discussed last week. You also had questions about the fire recruit pay. So we talked with the fire with Chief Curria and Deputy Chief Cruzen, and we are going to adjust the trainees' pay. So they will be paid the same amount as a firefighter at step 1. Their hours will be adjusted, and then that will result in an increase from firefighter trainee to firefighter step 1 of approximately 5.56%. So that will level that out some. And then there's no additional impact to the budget because we don't budget for recruits. Those costs are covered by savings for the vacant positions that they eventually will fill. So that request was granted. Any other questions on that?
Amy, is that stated just right? Because on the top red box, you say the trainees will be paid the same as firefighter step 1. And then the box below you say it'll result in an increase from trainee to step 1 of 5.56%, which I think is what we wanted, right? Yes, because
their hours change, Mayor. So they'll come in at the same rate, but they'll still get an increase at firefighter 1 because of the way their hours are calculated.
I got you.
Okay.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Chief, if I'm wrong at all on that, please correct me.
All right.
I'm good?
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, Amy, I wanted to thank all of y'all for working on it. Chief, you, Amy, the mayor, all, because I had the eerie feeling that we were going to get through with these pay raises and somehow that problem wasn't going to be solved all the way. And that would have been frustrating. Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
So total recommended requests 13.7, offsetting was 6.4. So total funded funding needed, I'm sorry, I can't talk anymore, 7.2. Adding the pay plan adjustment as we're recommending, it's $23.8 million that we need in funding. Okay. So just talking about the ARPA funds and how we could utilize those funds. This is to date, the unallocated portion that we have is $6.6 million. If you remember, we had allocated 3.7 for the property tax increase in 2021 that we didn't have to utilize because our revenues came in higher. We also had allocated $3.4 million this year for employee bonuses that we also won't have to utilize because salary savings are enough to cover that cost. So that would leave us with $6.6 million in unallocated ARPA funds. Does that make sense?
Right, but that doesn't count the, from the prior slide, the amount
Right.
you identified, right? Okay.
Right. So that total amount would be 1.5 million, Mayor. So we could use, it's not utilizing too much of that 6.6. So
Okay.
everybody's agreeable to allocating those funds. We can use 1.5 million. We do need to allocate additional funding to the Hope Center and the James E. Lewis Entrepreneurial Resource Center. Yes, Councilmember Shade.
Councilmember Shade?
Yeah, Amy, remind us again, what were the restrictions, if any, on the ARPA funds? Were we limited on per year, or we have a cap? We got to expend it all by a certain time frame? I just don't
You have
remember.
to have it allocated by a certain time frame and spent by a certain time frame. Yes.
By when?
I think it's allocated. Go ahead, Mayor. I'm sorry.
I think it was 2026, but I could be wrong.
So we need to spend the funds by, yes.
We're not bumping up against any time restraints. Okay, I knew that there was some limitation to it. I just didn't remember. So you recommending of the 6.6 that we spend 1.5, leaving us a balance about 5.1? Then
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. That slide might be wrong. I'm sorry. It's actually $2.8 million, Councilmember Shade. So if the bottom line right now, our draft budget, we have without any of these additional requests, it's 6.5 million in general fund, 8.9 in enterprise, so our total surplus of $15.5 million. And then if the 13.7, we have 3.6 million for offsetting funding resources. And then I'm sorry, it was almost 2.7 million for ARPA funds. So that would leave us with whatever that number is. Around 3.7 million in ARPA funds. And that would mean we would need an additional $8.3 million because we have that surplus of 15.5 right now in the general fund and enterprise funds. Does that make sense?
Right. I don't know if surplus is a
Yeah, it's not the right word, but
appropriate term, given that, you know, that's the funding that we can apply to the total funding needed. But so you still end up needing an additional 8.3.
that's right.
Right.
Any questions on that? So moving forward, we talked about ways to balance the budget before, additional revenue considerations. There's property taxes. We had gone through this a week or so ago. Value of a mill is 1.7. So 1 mill would generate 1.7, 2 mills, 3.4, and 3 mills is 5.1. And our millage bank is 6.85% or 5.2 mills. And just reminding you that we increased the property taxes by 3 mills for the 2022 budget, but with a local option sales tax, basically our citizens aren't going to feel that increase at all. So our net millage went down actually from before, and I'll show you the net millage graph in a second. But also keep in mind that with a recession, that could affect loss. So we can't rely on this happening every single time we increase millage, because local option sales tax won't always affect it in that way or impact it in that way. But this was the net millage. So you can see we raised millage 3 mills in 2022, but our net millage, because of the local option sales tax credit factor, is 60.8. So we actually went down in millage for 2022.
So Amy,
Mhm.
when we talk millage and compare millage with, North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, other surrounding areas, do we talk net millage or we talk gross millage?
I guess it depends. It depends on the conversation, right? So
Right.
when we talk about this, we usually compare net millage, Councilmember Waring, and we should give you that comparison. I could have put that in here and I didn't. But yeah, we try to stick with net millage because that's the true cost to the taxpayer.
And that's the number I think we should be using.
Mhm. I can get you the comparisons and send them later if you
Well,
want.
I actually love this graph right here.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
It
think
just
we're,
doesn't show you compared to Mount Pleasant or North Charleston or.
I think we ought to push it out to the press with a tutorial, frankly. I mean, it's that good. I mean, 2009, our net millage rate was 61.4, and in 2022 is less. I mean, that's great. I can think of another entity that graph doesn't look like that. That graph goes up from the low on the left to the high to the right.
That's right.
I mean, I think this is known among council and across our finance people, but somehow, especially with the world of inflation today, and we all experiencing it, somehow we almost need to market this. It's just a great idea. I mean, putting the lost revenue back to what
So
were
for
increases.
our full council workshop tomorrow, Councilmember Waring, I can include a slide that compares us to our partners around us if you'd like.
I think that would be great.
Okay.
That would be great.
Could you compare both numbers, please, Amy, both the millage rate and the net millage?
Yes.
You know what would be good, because in the middle, when you say net millage, we know how you get to that number, but if the public look, how do you get from 84.3 to 60.8? I mean, it's almost like it needs to be another line in there showing the millage credit each year for lost revenue. You follow me?
I do. I know I did that local option sales tax tutorial, if you want to call it that, a while back. I don't remember, but I'm sure we can include some type of calculation. So just kind of show how that works.
Yeah, I mean, you just need another line showing, for instance, I guess the millage rate would have been.
So I think the slide that we have shown in the past with the other entities around us has exactly that. It's got the gross millage and the net millage. Let me look at it and see what we can do to make it a little bit more clear.
Yeah, I mean, the reasoning why the net millage is 60.8, and in the case of 22. So you'd have obviously it's lost revenue, the effects of lost revenue, how lost revenue reduces the net millage.
Okay, we'll work on something.
Thank you.
And then for local option sales tax credit, we've given you these scenarios before, whether we roll back 75%, 50%, or 25%, and what that would mean as additional revenue to the city. And that's the numbers there. So if we kept 25%, yeah, that's right, kept 25%, we get 3.7, kept 50, 7.4, and if we kept 75%, it'd be 11.1. Good. Okay, and then that's the impact to our citizens, if we were to change our local option sales tax policy. Top is Charleston County, bottom is Berkeley County.
And when you say average home, you're saying a home that's appraised by the county at 500,000?
Yes,
That's a little higher than the example we've used in years past. We were,
well, yeah, last couple of years, we've been asked to increase that amount, so.
okay.
Okay,
Let me ask this, I guess I asked this to the mayor and all the council. You know how when ARPA money came in and we used ARPA money to obviously give pay raises and bonuses and things like that. And you know, you actually put a press release out on that. How come we don't put a press, and maybe we do, I don't know. A press release out on, you know, City of Charleston rebates, you know, 0.27% of local option sales tax, reducing city taxes, city residents taxes by, you know, X. In other words, when we use ARPA money, you get a big article. When we, I guess the guys in Columbia, when they envision lost revenue helping municipalities and taxpayers, this is what they envision. In other words, what is it, 73% or 72% has to go back by law to reduce property taxes? And then you get a municipality coming along for the better part of, I don't know, 20 years, giving all of it back. And what has been the result? A leveling off of millage rate. I know every municipality doesn't do it, but we do. And yeah, I sure would like us to get that more credit for what we do.
Sounds like a headline story to me.
I know.
It's complicated though, you know, because the figure you see on your tax bill is not a net figure. And so, and honestly, a story like this, well, we've tried to float some things about our AAA credit rating, about other, you know, positive news about how well Amy and the team manages our city finances. And honestly, the media doesn't seem to be interested in those kind of stories. You know, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So
you're right. So
anyway,
they did a big yawn.
I'm up for trying because I think it's a great story, but it is a complicated story in a way, and you know, there's no bleeding here, so I'm not sure how much coverage we would get. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, a couple of questions. You're showing a 4% legal residence ratio. Did you do one of these for 6%?
we have them for 6%. I just didn't put it in the slide, but we can do that.
Ma'am, I didn't understand you.
So I don't have them in the slide, Councilmember Shea, but we have done those examples in the past. I can add that
Okay.
if you'd like.
So what would happen if we increase our millage by another 3 mills to get to 5.1 million and then did this reduction of 75%?
Well, I can't.
What would that do for the 8.3 million shortfall?
So say that again. So all right,
All right, we're looking at options to at this $8.3 million shortfall, right?
So you're going to add the 3 mills.
All right.
And
So if you add the 3 mills, that's 5.1 million.
And then you're going to do where we only give back 75%, and we're going to keep 25%.
Right. So if you took the 3 mil increase, and then you had 75% revenue fund, that covers your shortfall.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be 8.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking for 8.3.
So this isn't taking consideration. I think part of this is this is sort of a double whammy. If you increase the millage by 3, and then you don't give 100% back of the LOST funds, taxpayers increasing their taxes by $100 and something, $150 plus a millage increase of 3 mills.
So
Right.
we can do that calculation, and I can't do it for you right this second, but I'm
Yeah,
wondering, we
no, I
can do
know-
it because we can show you what the impact would be to somebody's tax bill.
I mean, that's what we're essentially proposing.
Are we proposing that?
I don't know. I mean, that for some reason we sort of are trending towards, again, this lost revenue business and talking about a $5.1 million increase by 3 mil increase. That balances the budget. So I just want to know which direction we're heading in with all of this.
Well, that's a question I have as well as we move forward.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So expenditures, we can comb through the recommendations and reduce the amount we recommending focus on just on the top priorities departmentally and citywide. And then we talked about this before for the pay plan. If we were to reduce that in any way, 1% total cost would save us 1.3. 1% per police is 368,000. 1% for fire alone is 301, and 1% for non-sworn would be a $657,000 reduction. So next steps, that's my question, Councilmember Shea. Do we want to entertain a tax increase to cover the shortfall? Is it straight millage, loss only, a combination of both? Millage bank allows a tax increase of 5 mils, so that would equate to 8.5 million. So I don't know what the discussion. We have full council workshop tomorrow, so it'll be good to go tomorrow and with some recommendations on what we're going to do. Or are we just going to cut expenses? We can go through and do that and cut. Is it just operations? Is it the pay plan too? So those are just some decisions that we need to make.
Amy, this is
Yes.
Jennifer. And just to remind everyone, we have to send the ad in to the paper the week of November 21st, the beginning of that week. So
Yeah, I have that in a slide actually, Jennifer.
I jumped ahead of you.
So, where do you want us to go?
What do you think, Amy?
Well, I had not anticipated a tax increase because I know that that's unpopular. So we would basically probably go through the recommendation of expenditures. So I'm not sure what will of council is with all of that.
And we'd have to find what from expenditures? How much?
We would need the shortfall of 8.3 million.
Okay,
8.3 million.
okay, just making sure.
Mhm.
But if we
I would
did,
not want to touch the pay plan. So I would want to take it from anything else other than the pay plan.
exactly, exactly.
And I mentioned this the other day to y'all when we had the last meeting that many of the departmental requests are just trying to get us back to where we were pre-COVID. I will note that the number one request of almost all the departments was to adjust the compensation as we're proposing to do. So I don't recommend scaling back what we've recommended to y'all to date on that. But at the same time, I think these other proposed expenses have been well vetted and are appropriate. So we'll talk about it some more tomorrow and see what the consensus is. I know we've had discussions about the LOST for the last few years, and I think most of y'all know my position, and we can talk about this much further tomorrow at the workshop. I just keep getting back, Councilmember Appel, to the fact that with over the years, the difficulty to fund all the services that we need to in city government, and to have a quote legal way to secure revenue and not use it. You know, I stumble with that. I'm challenged by that. It seems to me that we ought to at least use a portion of what's available to us of the LOST revenue. It was set up that way for cities, municipalities to be able to use it. A number of them do. And I get it theoretically with the chart and the net millage, the impact on the net millage. At the end of the day, it's the tax bill that our citizens see, and you know, when they get that bill and there's just this credit on there and they don't know where it comes from, they don't know really anything specific about it other than there's just this magical credit number from sales tax applying to their bill versus the millage that you see on there. Again, I just think if we have a revenue source that we can legally use long-term, that with all the services we provide, that we need to utilize everything available to us. But
So I'm in the budget ad hoc committee.
we'll chat some more about that tomorrow. I think somebody else had their hand up. Councilmember Appel, you want to respond?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna mention, I think, between now and tomorrow, I think it would be helpful when full council gets together to talk about these issues and law specifically, how some of our neighboring jurisdictions handle this issue. I believe the city of Charleston's one of the only jurisdictions that gives the full credit back. I think the city of North Charleston doesn't give the full 100% back. They're certainly a pro-business, friendly climate. I just think having some perspective on this issue could be helpful as we sort of take this issue up again. If we have that handy, but I think we all understand, at least I hope that, we can quibble about whether this department needs, this system or that piece of equipment. We could maybe chisel away at some of the numbers there, but y'all know as much as I do that our budget is driven by people and paying people and staffing. And when you think of not just police, fire, but also our public service department and some of these other functions, we have got to fund these departments to operate a city that provides the services at the level that our constituents have come to expect and demand. And I think that this post-Ian, trash pickup issue was sort of just one little test study of that dynamic. And I know our crews are doing an amazing job, but we can't provide better service when we're understaffed. And solving that problem starts with us. It starts with budget. And I think that that's really what this is going to be about this time around. So those are my thoughts for now, but appreciate all the work that everyone's doing on this.
Yep. Thank you, sir. All right. Councilmember Waring.
Mr. Mayor, I hear your conversations. I understand both sides of the argument.
Yep.
But when those people may not understand why they get that credit, but they do understand the minus that it reduces their property taxes by. That part is clear. All the things that Councilman Appel just said is why we get paid the big bucks. I have no problem telling any constituent that I will vote for a millage increase to pay our police, our fire, and our sanitation workers, and I will be upfront about that. The aspect about the lost revenue is it's like a backdoor tax increase, and we don't have to tell the people about it. To me, it's about transparency, and from an accounting standpoint, millage rate from a revenue stream is much more dependable to any government than sales tax revenue. So the moment the economy dips, the sales tax revenue dips, but not the millage. And that's what we really depend on to pay some of those same salaries that was just spoken about. I agree with Councilmember Appel that we need to pay our people. I don't want to reduce the pay pan a penny. I think our people are worth more. If this is what's recommended, this is what we can do. And if it takes a millage rate to do it, I'm up for re-election next year. They have no problem voting for that whatsoever. So when people say they want to cut taxes, well, relate that back to cutting police, cutting firemen, and cutting the same men and women that come and pick up that trash out of your neighborhood. So, you know, in my case, I think it's clear that the millage is the more dependable stream of revenue for any government to depend on, in particular municipal government to depend on. We saw the situation with hospitality taxes, accommodation sales taxes, and lost revenue during the pandemic. I mean, it plummeted, but the millage stood right in there like a rock of Gibraltar. So we'll have the discussion.
Councilmember Shade?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just want to recognize Amy. She is a 7-day worker. I was checking my emails yesterday, and we were exchanging emails between Amy and I. And I just want to tell her, thank you for all the hard work and the hard work of her staff. I mean, it's what a dedicated group of people we have working in our finance office. And I wanted to make that shout out very loud and clear to you, Amy. Y'all do a yeoman's job. You always have. And I really appreciate how when you come into balancing this budget, you lean on the conservative side of what our revenue should be. And so when things get a little bit better than we anticipated, it's like a present we get at Christmas time. And you're doing that. But I just want to echo some of the things that Councilmember Waring and Councilmember Appel said. Yes, we've got to fund our people, and the proposed pay increase has got to be fully funded. We may make some tweaks with that, but that's part of the problem. But that slide you show us every year, Amy, on the net versus gross millage is a very telling sign on all of that, of what our net millage really turns out to be. And that's because of the 100% LOST funds that go back to our taxpayers. And I really do want to see if you can put it all together, Amy, what the impact is on a non-residential homeowner with that lost revenue not giving back to them. But other than that, I really just appreciate the work that y'all have done. This has been a good discussion, and I look forward to seeing where we are tomorrow at our workshop. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So we'll include both 4% and 6% tomorrow, Councilmember Shade, so you can see it. And the 16 different scenarios that we normally do.
Great.
Hey, Amy, is there
Yes.
a relationship, a statistical relationship between gross and net based on, or pattern based on the lost, 100% of loss? I mean, for instance, 3 years ago, millage was such and such, but it got a 20% reduction because of lost, and that trend seems to go across the board. Is there any relationship like that?
We have to look at that a little bit more, Rick, to see what was happening in those years, I think, if I understand you right anyway.
Yeah, I mean, just taking 2019, I mean, the gross millage was 86.6, net was 64.9. You know, what percentage of that decrease? I guess most of it is due to loss.
That's right. It just depends on how well we do and look option sales tax.
Yeah, so I'm guessing, I guess my question is, if you did the 5 millage increase and you extrapolated what the decrease would be based on a historical trend of lost benefits, does that get you anywhere? You know what I mean?
Maybe we did it. I mean, we just, those are based on actuals and budget, right? So, what's actually happened, we haven't done it based on an average over time. You know what I mean? Is that what you mean? Just kind of look at it as an average over time?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Maybe we can look at it that way. I have a whole lot of time before tomorrow night. We can try to do it different ways.
So here's another way of thinking about it, maybe. I mean, ultimately, LOST is a sales tax, right? And we're just allowed by state law to utilize a little portion of it. So you go out in the city and you pay $100 for something that's full sales tax is applicable to, not groceries, and $1 of that purchase, $1 would get added to it, right, as a local 1% local option sales tax. And so if we are allowed to keep up to 30% of it approximately, but we only kept half of it, that would be about 15% of the total. So of that dollar, 15 cents would go to the city budget and 85 cents would get credited to everybody's collective property tax bill. And I guess my point is, in funding city government, we got all these different ways to fund city government. We got millage, we got fees, we got business licenses, we charge a golf fee when you go play golf. You add all those different things up to create a composite of funding for our total operations. And for it to be diverse, in my view, to have as many sources to rely upon, is a benefit to the city long term. And so in this example, if you used half of what we would be allowed to under state law, or 15 cents off of that dollar to add to our other sources of revenue to make up the total pot. I just think long-term for future mayors and future city councils, to set the precedent to have that available to us as a funding source. And I recognize sales taxes or can vary from one year to the next, but it's good to have that diversity of sources to fill out the picture, so to speak. Anyway, that's my point of view, and I know everyone doesn't agree with that, but I think long term for our financial health to have that tool in the toolbox is a good thing. So I should have probably saved that for tomorrow, Councilmember Waring, but since I said that, I'll call on you again.
Well, we'll have a good roundabout on it, I'm sure. Let me ask this, Mr. Mayor and Amy, and I guess the clerk. I had asked for an executive session of council members, and the mayor obviously to discuss.
Oh, yeah. We got an executive session. Can I entertain a motion to go? Was there any other business before we go into executive session?
Mr. Mayor, go ahead, Amy.
I just want to, we'll meet, I guess for tomorrow, I guess my recommendation is just going to be cuts, Latin, because there's no other recommendation for revenue additions. And then we can just talk about all the revenue options later, but the recommendation will be to cut coming out of this meeting. And then with discussion on revenue items afterwards. So we'll have the November 9th meeting, and based on what happens tomorrow, we can hopefully pull something together and have a draft budget done or to discuss. And then, like Jennifer said, the advertisement for the draft budget is due by the 17th. We have another ad hoc committee meeting on November 16th, but I'm not sure if we necessarily need that. We need to have another full council workshop, so we're considering if maybe we can make that into a full council workshop rather than just ad hoc, but we can talk about that later.
Hey, Amy,
Yes.
this is Dudley.
Mhm.
So tomorrow you will be providing us with an example of if we decided to go the expenditure route, which ones we would cut or where we would cut it.
Possibly.
Because I think it's important to see more than one alternative here.
Mhm.
And you know, if we can do some changes to the expenditure without necessarily having to deal with loss, it would be great to at least see that and how it will affect things.
Okay.
All right. Councilmember
I
Waring?
just had any questions, and then the next thing was the executive session. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions for me.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Okay.
I just forwarded a little bit more money, Mr. Mayor. Remember, there was supposed to be an additional increase from CWS with them keeping up, bringing it the amount they pay the city up to inflationary standards. Remember, we had that discussion a year ago.
Right.
So I sent an email out earlier today, and heard from Wesley during this meeting. But anyway, it's going to be an additional 400 and additional, I believe, $433 a year. So that's not a millage, but I don't know, maybe that's a third of a mill, Amy, or getting close to a third of a mill.
Yeah. So you sent that to me, Councilmember Waring?
I just forwarded
Okay.
it. I just forwarded it to you.
Okay.
So
Perfect. So we'll include those numbers for tomorrow as well.
which will lower the money, lower the amount slightly.
Yep.
And I know you've been working on it. And believe me, I agree with Peter I think I got an email from Amy, and we all did, I think around 12 o'clock last night. And I was just saying to myself, go to bed, Amy, please. I mean, talking about going above and beyond. So if we did do what Councilman Gregory was recommending, if we looked at expenses, can we accept out the pay increase? In other words, that would be a given.
That would be held harmless.
Right. So look at anything else, but not. I think that's what you meant. But at the end of the day, you're talking about loss, Mr. Mayor. But the taxes that we should be collecting, I still believe that the overpayment that we're making to the PSD is just. I think our council is going to have to step up and make a decision on that, because our net millage rate is, as you saw, less than 0.61 in 22 anyway, 60.8. And I don't know what it is with the PSD, but I believe we're paying them twice what we collect. And then we have to pay the cost of servicing the properties that we annex. So in effect, we are supplementing the PSD financially. I just don't think the tax, it wasn't meant for the taxpayers to pay a premium to supplement a special purpose district. Those dollars should be coming in to run this city. And I think, again, if we had the net revenue off of that, and this may be an argument for next year, but those of us who are in council now should be educated on the millage we collect when properties annexed, what it cost us to service that property, and the amount that we're paying out to, in this case, St. Andrews Public Service Districts. That would be at the bottom line, net revenue that would go on the millage side, that would stay with city government. And it's just tightening up and giving a tune up to how we go about collecting our revenues as justifiably the city of Charleston revenues. So shortly after Amy gets all of this, and maybe she goes to the Bahamas or something and comes back, maybe we can get working on that and seeing what that net dollar is. I think all of us gonna be surprised at how much money that should rightly be staying with the city of Charleston.
All right. Okay, so any other business?
I
Here,
move that we go into executive session.
session.
Second,
Second, and this is the advisory committee, so I'm not sure how formal we need to be, but all in favor, please say aye.
aye.
All right, so Madam Clerk, if you want to create a room for us to go sequester ourselves for a little bit, I
And-
appreciate
and
it.